Everybody, please take a seat. If we could all rise. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Ms. Secretary, can we have a roll call?
Chairman, this meeting has been advertised pursuant to the Sunshine Law.
Okay, thank you very much.
Roll call, Mr. Candell,
Here.
Mr. Allegre,
Here.
Mr. Elmeyer, Ms. Larman. Here. Mr. Mueller,
Here.
Mr. Shaw,
Here.
Mr. Velosin,
Here.
Councilman Zabrowski, Chairman Tai.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Memorialization of resolutions. I need a memorialization for the Gonzalez subdivision, minor subdivision on Bordentown Avenue.
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Having a
Roll call.
motion made and second, can I have a roll call?
Mr. Candell,
Yes.
Ms. Larman. Yes. Mr. Mueller,
Yes.
Mr. Shaw,
Yes.
Mr. Velosin,
Yes.
Chairman Tai.
Yes.
Thank you.
You've all received the minutes from the last meeting of July 17th, 2024 and August 21st, 2024. I need a motion to accept those, please.
Make a motion to accept the minutes?
Second.
Having a motion made and seconded, could all in favor say aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Communication agenda.
None this evening.
Thank you very much. Site plan, subdivision. Mr. Sachs, you're up.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Lawrence Sachs on behalf of the applicant. This is, I think, our fourth meeting on this, fourth or fifth meeting. We were here back in July, and at that time, we presented to you in concept a parking system for the garage that's proposed to be constructed on this site. And we provided some information about that. We provided a revised architectural plan showing where this stacking system would be located. During the course of that hearing, it was requested by this board and even by the professionals that we provide some more detailed information as to how this system works, how it's manufactured, what the safety protocol is. So this evening I have two witnesses, Mr. Chairman. I have Mr. Sean Fitch, who is from Klaus Multiple Parking, Inc., and he will testify as to the design of this system, the safety features, and essentially how it operates from a mechanical standpoint. And then my second witness is Mr. Ping Liu, and he's from Metropolis Parking. They will be the operator of this particular system. And it should be noted to the board and to the members of the public that the operator will be on site for every Friday afternoon service, for any special events, for any other large gatherings that might occur at this particular facility. At the conclusion of this, Your Honor, Mr. Chairman, I don't have any further witnesses this evening. However, I do anticipate that at the next meeting, I will present to the board Mr. Stimmel again, who is our parking traffic expert and parking expert. He will be providing an updated traffic report for review by your professionals and by the board. And we also expect to have Mr. John McDonough, who is our professional planner, also testify at that evening. And of course, I'll have our engineer and architect who had previously testified.
Thank you very much.
All right, so that's what we'd like to do, Mr. Chairman. My first witness is Mr. Sean Fitch, and just so you know, we've handed out a PowerPoint presentation to you. However, we also have it up on the screen, or we'll have it up on the screen for members of the public and also for the board to obviously see that as well. So, Mr. Fitch, if you want to come up, I'll have you come up here. And you'll have to be sworn. Yeah, I do. I do. They're going to swear you in. So.
Mr. Fish, would you please raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're going to give this evening is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Can you please state and spell your name for the record?
Sean Fitch, S-E-A-N-F-I-T-C-H.
Mr. Fitch, if you could just indicate to the board who you work for, what your position is with that company.
Yes, so I work for Klaus Multiparking, also a subsidiary of Klaus GmbH, German manufacturing company, and my position is primarily business development and sales within the Northeast Territory.
Okay. And I understand, Mr. Fitch, that you prepared a PowerPoint presentation, which we're going to put up on the screen, and I guess you have the capability of changing the screen. So if
Yes,
you'd
I believe
like,
so.
why don't you indicate to the board how this system is designed, what some of the safety features are, and just give a general overview of that particular system.
Mr. Sachs, Jesus, that's really loud. I apologize. Before we get in there, I think we should probably mark the PowerPoint presentation as an exhibit, and I'm just trying to go through my notes right now. I don't know if we left off at 6 or 7. This would be 7? Okay.
Yeah, and just so the record is clear, it is a PowerPoint presentation dated 9/18/24, board hearing, Project Islamic Center, New Mosque, 216 Ernston Road, Sayreville, New Jersey, prepared by Klaus Multiparking Parking Systems.
I think for lack of visibility, is it okay if I just kind of speak through the slides without clicking through them since you're submitting it?
Well,
It's really entirely up to you,
we
but
can, maybe we can have Ping, if you want to be able to do that. Perfect. Okay, that's fine.
let me see if it's gonna, did it just advance?
Actually, if it's easier for you to sit over there, is that?
It may be.
Go
Is
ahead.
that-
Go
Is
ahead.
that okay?
Yeah,
No.
go ahead. Take the microphone with you.
Yeah, all right.
Okay, fine.
Yeah, get comfortable.
Yeah, is it all right if I actually just take a seat in front of it? Is that okay? I think that might be even. No, I'll grab this one here. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna actually go to the end of the slide deck first, because I think that that's actually important. And that's why, I'm sorry, I'm gonna flip around a little bit, but based on I think the topical requirements of this evening, it's important that I cover a little history of the company, and then I'll go into a little bit of a description about these particular stacked parking devices, and then I'll go to I'll go to some safety features specific to this device. So just to give you a little history, Klaus is about 102 years old, manufacturing company with about 60 years now in parking, with the first stackers being deployed in Germany prior to the Olympic Games in '64, and those are still functional today. Side note, we've been producing and installing these same devices, stackers in the U.S. since around the early 90s, and have established what I work for, the U.S. subsidiary, more recently in 2020. So you have a full-time group of individuals actually based here in Plainsboro in New Jersey, with our CEO and a number of different support staff all located here. So that's kind of, I think, beneficial, especially to a project located so close by. So that's a little bit of a background on Klaus. Just also, I'll note, we have almost 1 million spaces globally installed, so it's definitely a product that's used in great numbers all over the globe, and hundreds of thousands here in the United States. Okay, just bear with me 1 second. I'm going to get to a little bit of a description. We'll go to safety features and how the operation works, like this slide in a moment. I'm going to bounce around. My apologies. So I think this is good just for a good visual. This is a very simple and basic tool. You have everything is fully galvanized. You have very high quality materials, and it is operated with a hydraulic lifting cylinder. And the way it operates, if you see on the screen there, you see that little red, you clearly see a little red button and call it a little box. That is the operation switch. And a valet, because these are made for use with a valet only, that trained individual would take a key, and each one has a key assigned to it, and would use the key to turn left or right, depending on whether they want to lift or lower the platform. And they're visually, looking at the platform with the vehicle on it as they're performing this function. And that is really, truly the extent of the operational functions. It's literally an up and down functionality, and they would, if they had a vehicle underneath, they would move it out of the way into the aisle, and they would then lower the vehicle from above and transport that one also. So that's just kind of, I thought that was a good visual, very clearly see what it is.
Mr. Fitch, do me a favor. When you're referring to a particular PowerPoint slide, just indicate what the label is on that, just so the
Absolutely.
record is clear. So the last one, if you could just go back for a second.
Sure. 2 high stacker, no pit.
Okay, thank you.
So I think there's not much more of the actual operation of it to make clear, but I think we should go into kind of a little bit, line by line, that functionality. And I'll try not to read off the slide for you, but it is an electrical key switch, as I indicated. That's how it operates. There is an emergency stop button, so for any reason that, they needed to, that would be just a hard stop. There are also lockouts every 2 inches, so if for some reason they let go of the key or so, you've got to account for all scenarios. There is a lockout, so the vehicle could only descend, a small distance before being locked out. This is a hydraulic system. It's controlled by a hydraulic interlock, and that controls the very slow descent. It does give you velocity here, which is 4 inches per second. And they're not able to be physically interfered with. This is only able to be operated with that key switch turning on or engaging the interlock. So that's just kind of a deeper overview of the simple function. And this is the 2 high stacker, no pit, valet parking system slide.
And that's a system operation overview, right?
Correct. So again, just to kind of drive this function or process home, it is operated by a key switch only. Operator has to be functionally holding onto and operating the key switch at all times for it to function. And that's just simply lowering or raising a platform. Operator has to maintain visual contact at all times with the platform to ensure that it is operated safely, so that trained individual is in full control of the operation of the lift. During operation, if they were to fail, if the operator fails to maintain that electrical key switch, holding it in the raise or lower position, the platform would stop. And the platform maintains its position until the operator would then resume that operation. And again, there is an emergency stop button should that be required for any reason. Just to give an example, let's say somebody had a medical issue that they were holding the key in a position, but they were not physically in control of it. Another individual could hit the stop button, right? Just to give you a rare but potential scenario. Ground level vehicles must be moved prior to lowering the platform, and that is, in the control of the operator. And again, the system interlocks. This is the system operation continuation valet parking system, 2 high stacker, no pit. So just, I think in last, just to go through a little bit more of the of the features of the CP61 stacker, just so it's clear what this device is and how it operates, even though this may not be germane to the topic of the evening. It's a platform. Everything is hot dip galvanized. The platform, the structure. There are side rails, curbing, if you will. This continuous platform allows for drainage of all liquids. If it's rain, snow, or anything else, is drained to the side rails of the platform. Again, that's just for keeping the vehicle below protected, and it also drains to the rear. So this is kind of a nice picture of how that would look, with the hydraulic power pack, and you kind of get a better look at what the installed features might look like. I think this might be the last slide. I'm not sure if we need additional coverage, but we can go over, there is no emergency generator requirement, not required by us as a manufacturer. If there's a power outage, the hydraulic lifts can be lowered manually, safely. If one particular unit had some kind of a failure, the other ones, do not malfunction, they can continue to be used. So I think that might have been an important point. And downtime, if ever there is, it's typically due to user damage or long-term power outage by a utility company. And user damage is highly unlikely with a managed system. So.
All right, and that exhibit you're referring to is labeled Space Vario?
CP61 electrical.
Okay. How about the slide prior to that? I don't think we indicated for the record. That is two high stacker, corrosion protection and platforms?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think we've covered kind of the points here. There's some other slides, but they don't seem to be as necessary.
Well, you know what? Let's just go through them. Let's see if let's just get them on the record.
Sure. Just from the top, this is really just a diagram of the parking environment. This is the upper level, and this is the lower level that shows you, which I think everybody may have seen this already, with the CP61s laid out.
And that's the garage parking plan. By the way, that shows there are 57 individual stacking platforms. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, this actually gives you those breakdown of numbers. There's 57 systems, two parking spaces for each, so that you get your total number of park spaces within the stacker systems of 114. And you have platform vehicle load capacity of 6,000 pounds. And then in this environment, which you see on the left of on the right of the screen, is all valet parking. So valet attendants will park and retrieve vehicles from that system, and valet attendants and garage operations management will be by others, not by Klaus Multi-Parking.
All right, and that exhibit is the project parking exhibit.
That's correct. I think that's about where we started, so we might want to pass this for a moment, and I'll just quickly scroll through and highlight any other slides that we didn't speak to, and I'll just bypass the ones that we have. And this is really just showing the requirements for power, electrical supply for the units.
Yeah, why don't we just quickly indicate what the power supply is that's necessary.
So for each unit, you have 25 amp fuses, and this is only when the motor's running. I'm not sure what information you're looking for exactly. I don't know. I haven't done an electrical study. I don't know the full amperages of the system.
All right, but those are the details for what's required for electrical capacity. Okay.
Correct.
And the next slide.
Again, more continuation of electrical performance.
All right, so this is labeled electrical and register of electrical performances. So it indicates that you need lockable master switch, supply side cable, junction box, cables, operating element. These are all electrical details, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
sprinkler and water.
Yeah, let's talk about this. So this is the fire protection exhibit?
Correct. And, you know, just for the record, we are not a fire protection consultant. It's dependent on whatever municipal requirements are.
Okay.
But this is showing a detail of typical, what we'd call typical requirements for sprinklers. You know, allowing some space, you know, minimums of 4 inches at the sides, having at the rear system sufficient space for a sprinkler. You know, so allowing in those, you see those dashed areas, allowing space for locating potentially sprinkler heads.
Okay.
And again, this is, you know, you'll have a fire protection consultant that will detail what that would look like in design. And this is just a list of some completed projects in the U.S. with this particular stacked unit. I think that's really just there to give an example of our footprint in the U.S. with that particular product. Warranties, we are, you know, making available to purchasers 1 year of service and including parts and labor. And we do offer extended warranties, so that's usually up to the individual client. We do preventative maintenance. We have service teams that will come out 2 times a year and maintain these systems, review systems for, you know, typical wear and tear, and do preventative services at those times, which in the case of the stacker is typically just lubrication. It's not much more than that.
Okay, and that's contained on the warranty, service, and training exhibit?
That is correct, yeah. And then, of course, the system user training provided by us is given to, in this case, would be to Metropolis and to other stakeholders that would want to have that training experience, and we would have our personnel go through the entire system and usage with those individuals, and we provide training materials that we can be, you know, used for training others later on as needed. And this is where we started.
Okay. All right, and I think you've indicated your operations in the United States are located in Plainsboro, New Jersey?
That's correct, yeah.
And is that where your technical support is based out of as well?
That is correct.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Chairman, I don't have any further questions of Mr. Fitch. Certainly, if the board has any questions, he's certainly available for that.
Find out, anybody have any questions of the manufacturer's rep?
Yes, I do.
Go ahead.
What is your typical clientele that gets this installed?
What is your I'm sorry, the question was, what is your typical clientele?
Yeah.
It varies, but working with a parking management company is very common for them to have stacked parking, and so I think that is our common customer for stacked parking is a parking management company. So for this particular product, that's who we probably have the most sales with. They are also sold to other types of environments, but predominantly it's a parking management company.
Is there a safety record that you have access to? Like for all the installations you did, how often were there any safety violations?
No, I don't have access to any of those. We don't manage the environments, so it'd be up to each individual parking management company would have their own records.
Are there any sensors that will prevent someone from bringing a bay down? A sensor that will override manual lowering of the bay?
I'm not sure I understand the
Yeah.
question.
Someone by mistake tries to lower the bay when there is a car or an individual below the bay. A lot of places, they have sensors, right? A sensor detects an object. It would not allow you to make it go down or up. Do we have that?
So this is, as I explained, it's a manual control with a very close proximity to the mechanism. You have to be engaged in the operation, and you physically are watching the lowering of the device. So no, there isn't any sensors required. It's the responsibility of the operator of the device, and again, those are trained individuals.
Okay, thank you.
Are you gonna go over how long it takes for these to operate in and out or the parking?
My next witness is the
Okay.
operations. They'll cover
I
it.
just didn't want him to get away without. Anybody else have any questions of the manufacturer? Go ahead.
Chairman, I do.
Mr. Chairman, the one slide you provided had an example of projects that were completed. There were 9 indicated, they're all in Florida, and the uses are mixed uses, commercial uses, condominiums. Do you have examples of where this is in New Jersey, and have you used those for house of worship type applications?
I don't think we have any with our stackers, but there are other competitive companies with similar operation that have been installed that you can find all over New Jersey.
Thank you.
I have only one question. Can you give us a little understanding on the service records of these units? How long they stay in operation, how much they need to be serviced, what happens when they don't work right, and how long it takes to get them fixed?
So I'll go with life expectancy. I think that's kind of what you were getting at. It's indefinite. They're zinc, magnesium plated galvanization and hot dip galvanization. They're made for all types of salt and every other type of corrosive material, so that they don't rust or corrode. The operation is a well over-engineered hydraulic cylinder that never fails. It's never working hard. So in most cases, when they are serviced, it's an indefinite lifespan. And that's, the reality of it. Like I said, we have installations in Munich from 1964, still operating today. So we don't really know. We know that if you don't care for them, that you could shorten that potentially, but we know that when they are serviced, they're indefinite.
Mr. Chairman, I have a few questions. Can you turn off your microphone? I think we got a lot of feedback. And down the end here. I think that's better.
I believe it was 4 inches per second. I do have it in the slide deck here somewhere. So in most cases, you're looking at 30 seconds for operation. Yeah. And down is roughly the same. And the only thing that ever impacts that even, 4 inches per second. The only thing that impacts that is cold temperatures may slow it incrementally, like 5% slower. So I'm just, want to make sure I say that because it's realistic. When the hydraulic fluid is colder, it moves a little slower. But
What is the temperature the parking garage needs to stay at?
well, ambient temperatures above freezing would be preferred. But it can work in sub-freezing temperatures, just slightly slower.
This Metropolis parking system package says that you're the parking operator. Are you going to be the operator at this facility?
Metropolis?
Metropolis is?
Yes.
Okay. Let me see. Is Klaus okay with when the units are not manned or operated? Can the public park on the bottom level?
As a manufacturer, I wouldn't make that decision. I don't see why you couldn't. There's no reason, if they don't have access to the keys, right? There's no way to operate it, so it's feasible that you could.
So the public's not to park their own car on the bottom level?
If they decided to, I don't know the liability of every individual or institution, but yes, it's.
Whereas the manufacturer would recommend or not recommend.
I wouldn't recommend, I'm saying you could. That's the recommendation, that's just is it feasible? Yes.
Feasible, yes, but.
Yeah, but I can't make that recommendation, it's if you want to use it in that way, you could.
The rest of my questions will be for the operator.
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
Mr. Fish, just to be clear, have you ever used this system or installed it in a house of worship?
This particular stacker, I have not, no.
Have you ever installed any system in a house of worship?
Yes, It was non-valet attended, totally different scenario, yeah, and different piece of machinery.
And all the examples that you gave were in Florida. Is there a reason for that? Is the system climate sensitive?
No, I think those were just some of the larger installations that were highlighted.
Yeah, and Mr. Chairman, I think what we can provide for you is we'll get you a list of other locations that have utilized this system here in the Northeast. All right? And Mr. Fitz, let me ask you a question. I mean, obviously, having a valet service on one of these systems is much more preferable than just having a non-attended system. Is that correct?
Yeah, the key is a valet attended environment with these stackers.
In that vein of talking, on Fridays, you're gonna have the valets.
Yes.
What are you gonna do the rest of the week? So you're gonna let people park by themselves, or you're gonna have the valets then?
I'm not sure there's really a need for the valet when we have just our other services, which we think we've provided testimony that they're not really well attended. The Friday afternoon service we know is the biggest one, but certainly if there are 30 people who are attending a service on a routine Thursday morning, they're either going to park in the surface spots outside, or they could utilize some of those spots in the garage as well. But certainly, this board could condition whatever you want with respect to when valet service is necessary. But I think right now, the expectation is the only time it really will be necessary is during the Friday services, any other special events that we might have. I think we've already indicated for the major holidays, those are all going to be off-site anyway, so.
If you find that the influx is more, you're gonna change it and bring in a valet then?
Yes,
You wouldn't be mind to have that part of the acceptance?
no objection to that, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions, Barry?
One
Go ahead.
follow-up.
No, that's very customizable or unique to every use case. And I think Metropolis, through their experience, knows the ratio best. Yeah, there is a magic number. I just don't know it. Their experience can tell you that for sure. No, usually it's a per unit. You can, I mean, we have had installations where it was requested to key them all the same. So I guess that's really up to the individual.
If not, just for the public's notice, we're gonna, since these are both similar, we're gonna do both of the reports, the comments at the end. So save your comments after we see the parking attendance. Don't go far.
Good evening. Would you please raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're going to give this evening is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I swear.
Can you please state your name and spell it for the record?
Ping Liu, first name P-I-N-G, last name Liu, L-I-E-U.
Mr. Liu, if you can give the board and the public the benefit of your logged out.
Can I log back in real quick?
Just a second, Mr. Chairman. Okay, Mr. No problem. Mr. Liu, if you can give the board the benefit of your employment experience, who you work for, and I know you also have a PowerPoint presentation, which I know you'll go over. I would also request that you refer to, if you're referring to one of the exhibits, just indicate what that exhibit is.
Absolutely. So I'm employed by Metropolis Technologies. I'm employed by Metropolis Technologies. We're a 7-year-old company as the parent company, but we actually just acquired SP Plus, which is the oldest parking operator in the country. They're 95 years old this year, so collectively we have 102 years of experience in the parking industry. That also makes us the largest parking operator in the country. I'm the director of operations on the East Coast, so I oversee New York, New Jersey, all the way down to Atlanta, Georgia. As a collective company, we employ over 23,000 employees. We have 4,000 locations, and just 300 in Manhattan alone. So quite a wealth of experience here. I've been with Metropolis Technologies for about 2 years and in operations and logistics for most of my career.
So if you can describe, and I don't know if you want to sit back there, if it's easier for you to do the PowerPoint back there.
Yeah, if you don't mind, my vision's not great.
So, Mr. Sachs, while he's going back there, we're going to identify this as Exhibit A8, and this is going to be the PowerPoint prepared on behalf of Metropolis, correct?
Yes, it's labeled Metropolis X Masjid Sadar Community Center, dated, well, it says July 46, 2024, but we know that that's not correct, so July of 2024.
Should be 16. So in slide number 2, just general overview of the Metropolis parking system. We utilize computer AI and machine learning to actually tie license plates to specific profiles. It gives us the ability to enhance a customer's experience. If you imagine, typically when you go to a parking operation, they hand you a ticket, you leave, and you're sort of an anonymous face. With Metropolis, once you register, you're good in any Metropolis location. So when you come back, they can say, you know, welcome back, Mr. Liu. Hope you had a great time, and so on. So we're able to elevate our experience with Metropolis Technologies. Since our acquisition in May, we've seen quite a bit of growth. We're at 600 plus locations Metropolized, but we're actually about 4,000 combined with SP Plus and Metropolis. We have 4 million members, and we're deployed across 40 plus markets currently, and we're in the process of converting all of our sites over. Slide 4. Just generally, you know, our goal by 2026, we want to see 50 million members on our platform. That way, we're able to achieve the network effect. So if you park here at the temple one day and then you go to the city, you know, next weekend, you already have a profile, you just pull in, and it's a seamless experience all over, and you get that network effect from our scale. And by 2026, we anticipate we'll be in 360 plus markets. So just a general overview of our valet experience. When a car pulls up, the valet attendant will walk up. All of our valet attendants are armed with an iPhone or an iPad. They'll scan the license plate with that device. It will automatically read, and if it's your first time visiting, they will send an invite to your phone or by text message. And it's 4 easy questions: name, license plate. Typically in a commercial operation, it would be a credit card, but in this operation, it will not. So that will be bypassed, and then email. And normally in a commercial operation, there will be a button on the customer interface. No app download or anything required. It's right there in your text message. You just click the link, and it lets the valet attendant request the vehicle for you, and it lets the valet attendant know ahead of time. Through this, you know, through the profile creation and, you know, the request your vehicle function, it creates a seamless operation. We've gotten, you know, overwhelmingly positive feedback on this new sort of twist on parking. And slide 8. This is the digital car request function that I was referring to earlier. So in the customer view, you'll see the request your vehicle button. You'll click that. If this was a commercial operation, they would add a payment method, and we'll get into this site specifically, you know, as the slides go through. But in the general operation, you would add your payment method, and that will live within your profile, so you don't have to add that again. And then it notifies our valet, and you get what we call our pizza tracker, where you get status updates on the status of your vehicle. This is just our general dashboard for what our valets see. So if somebody drives in and it's checked in, there's different statuses in each box. You can see the number of requests that come in, the status of it. If they're in departures, the valet has already worked on the vehicle, got it set up on the ramp, and ready to hand the keys over. You can see also in the bottom left, retrieval in progress. So there's always a very clear view for our valets, what is going on the site. Just for chain of custody, we also utilize key tags that the valets use to scan with their iPhones. These key tags get attached to key loops so that if somebody drives in with a white Tesla and then somebody else drives in with a white Tesla, you don't hand over the wrong keys. They're tied to that specific visit. Slide 12. This is more for general commercial applications. If you visited Manhattan, oversized add-ons and so on. This is not applicable in this scenario. It's just more so to describe our general product. And then damage reports. So for claims and liability purposes, each visit the valets can click into each section of the vehicle right here, and that's sort of the cartoon drawing. They can take a photo and then mark where any damage is so that everything is properly documented for claims and liability. Slide 14. Somebody can also schedule requests for their vehicles. So we actually, in the operation plan for this site, we're actually opting to disable this function in favor of efficacy of removing vehicles and bringing vehicles in, because we know that we have a tight turnaround for this. So for this site specifically, if you look here, this is the surface lot. We have roughly 43 parking stalls in this area. So the way we envision this operation, we will cone off all the surface lot spots and hold this location as an overflow lot. All vehicles will drive in unless an attendant sees a vehicle, it's oversized or handicap required, then they will direct the parker to park in one of these spots. Otherwise, everybody will drive down into the garage. Where we get here, they will pull up. If you see on the bottom left or the bottom right, that's the ramp. They'll come around to the elevator bank. And we envision having multiple teams. So section A, B, C, D, and E will all have a team of two. One to run the vehicles, the other one to operate the lifts. So as Sean, my colleague here, mentioned, the lifts can be operated 30 seconds up, 30 seconds down. That does not account for the human factor. So bringing the vehicles back, properly locking the vehicles, parking in the spot. So the reason we're separating out these in sections is, if you imagine one vehicle comes down, it lines up and it goes to section A, goes into the first stall in section A. His counterpart will move the vehicle up top. The next vehicle goes into section B, C, and D, and E, and so on, sequentially, so that they're not all tied together. I hope that makes sense. In that way, we're able to operate the valet efficiently, so they're not waiting on each other and bumping against each other in the operation. The way we envision this site, as well as on exit, we will have the vehicles pulled out in the same sequence, just in reverse. That way, it's much more efficient. We realize that we have about 1 hour to bring all the vehicles out, check them out, and then the next group will come in as well. And we feel that with a team of 12, we can do this very well. And we're also very cognizant of the traffic in the area, and we want to make sure that we preserve that. So when we operate in this fashion, we save the upper lot for overflow so that all the cars can be staged in that area versus backing up into the street. That concludes my slide deck.
Just so it's clear, if you can go back to those last two slides, I just want to get the
Yes, sir.
title of that. So the surface lot is operational plan,
Operational plan, slide 16.
okay? And the next,
then the garage view is operational plan, slide 17.
okay. And let's just go back for a second. So let's talk about, you said vehicles will be staged in a different location to account for the fact that you don't want to have backups going onto the surface parking lot, which could impact traffic. Just briefly just describe that again.
Correct. So as you imagine, vehicles will pull in where this red arrow comes in. They'll make the right around the curve and then go down the ramp. So because we're pulling the cars to the furthest possible location on site, it gives us room to line up the vehicles behind it as they're continuing to park. And then if vehicles are deemed oversized or should be kept on the service lot, to accommodate handicap, ADA required vehicles, for example, they can be parked in this area, and those parkers can be directed to a specific spot to park in. So in that way, for example, if we kept the valet operation right here at the entrance, for example, then the traffic would be backed out into the street. But obviously, we want to be cognizant of the community, so we pull all the vehicles to the furthest possible point in the operation.
All right, and you're going to have 12 valet parkers for Friday afternoon services.
Correct.
And any other time that it's really deemed necessary.
And large events.
All right, and your turnaround time is about 1 hour?
Out and in for the next group.
Okay, so 1 hour out and in, okay. And in terms of large vehicles, just so it's clear on the record, larger vehicles will not be parked in this stacking system. They'll be parked either in surface parking or in other locations that don't have the stacking.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So maybe Sean could confirm, but typically we can fit mid-sized SUVs on the bottom row of a stacker, but we would never put them up top, and then larger, full-size trucks, for example, would keep them on the surface lots and not even put them under the stacker or above.
Okay, and if there are certain individuals who need to be there for both services on a Friday, for instance, clergy, staff that will assist, they would go on the top spots as well.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. All right.
So with the typical valet operation, whoever's going to stay the longest would typically be up top and the furthest back.
Okay.
So that way, not to impede the operation of the rest of the valets.
Okay, and there's 12 employees. Is some person designated as sort of the manager of this operation?
Correct. So, sorry. Here you go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we would have 10 employees down below with a captain, and then one up top, essentially screening vehicles going down to identify which should stay up top. Again, full-size vehicles or ADA required. And again, the captain down below that's sort of directing the teams.
Okay. Anything else you need to add, Mr. Liu?
I think that's it on my end.
Okay, all right. Mr. Chairman, certainly Mr. Liu is available for any questions. He can certainly go through any of the slides on the exhibit as well.
Anybody have any questions?
Sure, go ahead. First up. Where are the 12 people parking, the 12 employees?
We would typically keep them on the surface lot or in the back of the garage, so up top and towards the back.
So in a sense, you're losing 12 spots right off of the get-go.
Not necessarily. We could also probably have a procedure where we could have them park off-site and then just transport them to the site.
Hang on.
Mr. Liu, given my knowledge of labor markets, what are the odds, what's the probability of you actually having 12 employees who are going to work a limited shift on a Friday, midday to a mid-afternoon? And so the follow-up question to that is, what's the minimum manpower that's needed to operate this facility?
The minimum, I would say, efficiently within the time frames that we're required to operate, I would say 11 at minimum. So in terms of the labor markets, we operate a lot of event lots, event garages all across the country, and there's quite a market for part-time labor for this type of, for this type of job. We typically do not have any trouble, staffing for these types of operations.
We could also agree, through the chair, that if we don't need 12 employees utilizing the parking services, we won't use 12 employees. Again, I agree with you, Mr. Pullman. This is really limited activity on a Friday afternoon and on a special event. So if we can get away with less than 12, that's fine. And by the way, I didn't mean to aggravate the crowd when I said we would transport them off-site. I certainly would not want to tie up any of the available parking at this location. But if it requires the House of Worship to have some type of van and have these individuals park elsewhere, maybe not in Sayreville, and certainly in no one's driveway, we'll do that because we want to obviously maximize the spaces on site.
Thank you. Anyone else? Go ahead.
Some more.
All right, Dan. Go ahead. You.
Yes, I can. All right. According to the information we received, the Friday prayer, the first one ends at 12:45. The second one starts at an hour, 1:20. How many employees do you need to exit? I don't want to hear from you. I want to hear from you. How many employees do you need to exit and onboard the full parking lot between 12:45 and 1:20 start time?
12.
So because in your documents here, it says you need an hour between services.
It's a
You have 12:45 to 1:20. It's 35 minutes.
You're referring to an exhibit that was provided prior to us looking into this staged parking system, stacked parking
So
system.
can we get testimony updating the times?
Yeah, we'll be able to do that, but we can commit to the fact that it'll be an hour lag in between the two.
Between finish time and start time of the next? Can we get confirmation that's permissible?
Yeah, it's certainly permissible. I'm also going to bring it tonight because I do have it, and I'll provide it to council and to your secretary of the board. I do have a calendar, which I think was requested, of every day when services will start. And I think we indicated last time, we do have some flexibility in terms of start time, but we do know that we need this hour gap, so.
You need an hour and a half between. An hour between the end of the first and the start of the next one?
Danny?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I was basically going to ask the same thing. How long would it take? You have 121 parking places. How long does it take to empty that entire 121 cars?
Yeah, so to empty it, we would say about 30 to 35 minutes, and then to get them in, it's a little faster because everybody's driving in and you're not bringing the vehicles and checking them out. So again, about an hour to empty and then bring vehicles back in.
No question. So what is the cycle time? My user experience with you. I come in, you get in my car, I hand you the keys.
Yep.
What's your cycle time from that point I hand you my keys to the time you hang it up and get to the next one?
Sure. That's why we have multiple teams, though. So as one
I
is
just want to know for one.
So
One
give or
team.
take, the car pulls in, the runner comes, takes the keys, and takes it to the ramp and drives it up. About a minute to a minute and a half.
A minute to a minute and a half, okay.
Yep.
And how about if I were to leave?
Well, so we would bring it out.
If I'm the top car and this car parked underneath me?
Right. So from the top car, it would be 30 seconds down, and
No.
then
There's a car underneath, and I'm the top car.
well, that's why the exit would be in a systematic fashion. We're not just taking vehicles as requested. We're taking vehicles out as
But how
they.
can you guarantee that I'm not going to stay? I've got a basketball court, I've got an exercise room, I've got classrooms to go to.
Of course.
How do you guarantee, so before you get involved, exit the bottom car,
Yep.
bring my car down, pull the car back in.
Sure. So two-part question. In a typical valet operation, as somebody gets checked in, they would ask them, "What are you leaving right away?" or "What time are you leaving?" And so that would get marked.
I park in these in New York City all the time. I want my car to be convenient. I always say I'm leaving in under an hour.
Right. Oh, then your vehicle isn't going to be brought out until everybody else
All right?
gets
Or
brought out,
I
because
say
in this
the
fashion.
shortest time possible.
The
right?
shortest
So
time
I want to
possible.
keep my car closest to it.
Mr. Chairman, we can't have two people talking at the same time, so.
So just answer the straight question. Time.
Sure.
I'm on top, there's a car below me. How long does it take to get my car?
So, just, I want to preface that's not how we would operate this.
Good. I wanted the answer
However,
anyway.
with that, if we had to do it, we would have to pull a car out. That would take about 45 seconds, and then bring the car down. That's another 30, so that's an hour, minute and 15, and then just drive it back up to the top, so about another minute or so. So 2 minutes and 15 seconds.
And
Hang on, we can only have one person talking, thank you.
just a follow-up question, will the attendees to the mosque, will they be parking their own vehicle in a lower level?
They will not, no.
Is there any reason for that?
Because we want to make sure it's the most efficient operation possible. So we want to fill them in sequentially. Fill them in, move them up, and then once the top is all filled in, then we fill the bottom row sequentially.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I can just respond to one comment.
Go ahead.
Someone who, I think there was a comment that, someone could stay there all day. No, that's not feasible, because we have committed to the fact, and we'll agree to a condition, that on Friday afternoons when we're doing services, there are no other activities occurring here. There's no exercise, there's no gymnasium, there's no classes being conducted. So the only activities that are going to occur on a Friday afternoon, when this parking system really will be in its highest demand, will be the ritual services.
Can I make a comment to that? Hold the public comment for later, please.
Go ahead.
So on Friday afternoon, I can't work out before it starts, and I can't stay afterwards to work out?
Well, we'll have a policy that if you're working out on Friday morning, and by the way, I don't think that's going to happen because that's a holy day, but if you were able to exercise Friday morning, you're going to have to be out of that facility and have your vehicle out unless you're planning on staying for services.
Right, so if I want to stay for service or I want to stay afterwards to work out, play basketball, I could.
You said there's no workout after, so maybe.
I'd like to hear that from
just said
the applicant, not.
Yeah, I mean, I'm advised that it takes time to set up the prayer facility, and so there, Mr. Khan, I know you've been previously sworn, if you want to.
Yeah, usually, Friday is a working day. Most of the people that attend the services are coming from work. So the masjid basically is not open for any activities in the morning because they are preparing for these services, which takes time, like they have to vacuum the carpets and things like that. So usually there is no activity prior to the services. And
So
again,
all aspects of the building will be closed for the day except for the prayer room?
that is correct. And maybe there will be some activities in the evening, but not during the prayer services, maybe after.
Not during,
Yeah.
after the prayer service is over,
Yeah, there will be no activities, no.
after it's over.
After it's over, yeah.
So the evening.
And most of the time, people are in a rush to go back to the work. So basically, they are coming to taking a lunch break or whatever to offer the prayer services. So usually, they just leave, go back to the work.
Anybody else? Go ahead, Zach.
Mr. Liu, you state in your PowerPoint that you need at least 1 hour to get people in, get people out for the next service?
Yes, sir. Well, roughly about an hour to get everybody, just on a more conservative estimate, yes, it would take approximately an hour.
And then in the PowerPoint, it says that the traffic conditions from the street will impact that, right?
No, I did not.
It says here, traffic from the street as well as surface lot will back up the flow on the lower level, correct?
Sorry, can you repeat that? I didn't
It
catch
says
that.
traffic from the street as well as surface lot will back up the flow on the lower level, correct?
No, what I meant to say is that we plan the valet sort of base to be the furthest in the operation, so it doesn't back out into the street.
Won't the traffic on Erston Road impact that 1 hour?
It will.
And let me explain. It will. I mean, especially on Friday, because I know you have you have the upper elementary school down the block. On a lot of Fridays, there's early dismissal, so you have all the school buses leaving the UES around 1 o'clock going down Ernston Road. It's going to take a lot more than an hour, correct?
Mr. Mueller, I know you're asking lines of questioning regarding traffic. I'm not sure he's the one who's qualified to answer that. That would be my traffic expert who will testify at the next hearing, but he's obviously now has the benefit of this testimony, and I think he can give you a detailed analysis of how that will operate. And I think even, it may have been at the first meeting, we agreed to a condition that we're going to have the police there, which will obviously control the traffic exiting and entering that site, so.
My point was just that the 1 hour is contingent upon there being ideal traffic conditions that abut the facility, correct?
It doesn't stop us from bringing the vehicles to, the customers, the parkers, though. We can still bring them down the ramp or to their vehicles, and they can be there. The traffic flow out, again, I couldn't speak to for the traffic, but they will have their vehicles in hand, ready to go.
They'll be ready to go, but if they can't pull out onto Ernston Road because it's all backed up with school buses and other cars, you're not gonna empty that lot out in an hour, right? And I'm asking you about a hypothetical, so I understand.
Sure.
Your 1 hour is based on an assumption that you're gonna have ideal traffic conditions on arguably the worst road in our town.
Again, I can't speak to the traffic pattern, so.
Okay. Mr. Chair, if I may, the procedure, we're keeping the same procedure we've done through every hearing. The witness testifies, the board and the board professionals ask their question, then it gets open to the public at the end to ask the questions. We're not changing it. That's how it has been. That's how it's going to continue. Right now, we're in the board and the board's professionals asking questions of the witness. You will be allowed to ask your questions when the board is completed.
Which vehicles are you classifying as large vehicles that cannot go on the top bay?
Typically full-size trucks or full-size SUVs. We wouldn't put any SUVs on the top. Mid-size SUVs would be under the stackers, but otherwise that would be it. That would be the limit.
Okay, another question I had is you mentioned that it takes about an hour when you guys have done a lot of events, right? Now, events are in an ideal situation like Mr. Mueller said. Like you're at PNC Bank Arts, it's a huge parking lot. You can get 100 cars in, 100 out. This is not the case here. So if you have Ernston Road backed up, or how you intend to bring 60 cars up, and where are they going to be parked? How are they exiting and you're getting 60 cars in? For that, do you think ideally you can get it done in an hour?
Again, that would, I guess, would depend on the traffic pattern. I'm not qualified to speak to the traffic patterns in the town. So I believe there is an expert coming next week or at the next hearing, so.
Right. So from that, Mr. Sachs, like I said, the traffic study engineer would be there, but I think we would need him as well because his operation is different than the traffic study engineer's study, right? The traffic engineer just does a study, but does not operate up and down.
Mr. Shah, I haven't provided you with a revised traffic study yet, but we're going to provide that. Just a follow-up question, though, Mr. Liu. I know we were talking about special events that might occur where you're providing parking, which, of course, you don't know how things are going to operate. Would you consider this to be a consistent, routine parking pattern that's going to occur every Friday in terms of a house of worship use?
It does, yep. So we're typically used to operating at baseball stadiums, concert venues, such that is quite a multiple of this operation. I do anticipate that this would be a very consistent operation.
The only difference is in concert venues, when the concert is over, people are going home. Here, you're between two different prayer services, so it's urgent that, the people who completed prayers are going out, and the ones that are coming in for prayer, they don't have the luxury of time like the concert goers do.
Mr. Liu?
Yes, sir.
So 1 hour was your conservative estimate to empty the lot and restack it. What's your non-conservative estimate?
It wouldn't vary, about 10 minutes faster, about 50 minutes. But I
15
think we're
minutes
right at
faster?
50,
Or
50,
slower, I guess
50.
it would be?
About 50 minutes for the full cycle.
Well, conservative would be the hour, so we would think non-conservative would take you longer.
So then I reverse those then.
Okay, so 15 minutes slower? So 1 hour and 15 to empty the lot?
Yeah.
Best scenario is 50 minutes, worst scenario is 1 hour and 15. Is that what we're testifying? Yes. Okay. Anybody else have any questions?
Tom.
Go ahead, Jay.
Mr. Chairman, a couple questions. Do you have examples of any other houses of worship in New Jersey where you provide these services?
Not in New Jersey, no.
And could you walk me through the path of a driver of a vehicle that comes into the facility? Where does he exit the vehicle? After the service is over, where does he go to retrieve the vehicle? How does he get it? Is everybody dropping off in front of the building? Are they dropping off in the garage area? Could you just clarify that?
Sure. On the entry, everybody's pulling in down the ramp, and it's not up, but when they come across, if you would see the bottom row, the bottom drive, there's an elevator bank, so they drop the vehicle off there. They would get checked in, and they would take the elevator up to the facilities. And then from there, the valets would take it around the garage and park it. On the way out, so the vehicles would be pulled out in the same sequence, but in reverse, and pulled up to the driveway to the front of the building. And then the vehicles would be picked up there. So then we are able to line up vehicles through the lot and down.
So you're going to be stacking the vehicles. When someone's leaving, you're stacking the vehicles in the upper portion of the parking lot, not in the garage.
Correct.
So potentially you could be blocking the other parking places with your stacking of vehicles?
Well, that is why we're valeting, because the first people in will be the last out. And so in the same concept, the first vehicles in would be the last out as well. So we're matching the sequence of how somebody will come into the temple.
I have some concerns with how that's going to operate. I'm concerned with the spaces being blocked by the valet vehicles coming out of the garage area, the surface parking up above being blocked by the valet vehicles.
So typically we would cone off one lane, and that would be the staging lane, and then the others would be the traffic out, because there is no two-way traffic, right? The vehicles are either coming in or they're coming out, but they're not coming in and out during the same time period.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions?
Tom.
Go ahead. All right, hang on.
Mr. Liu, at the end of the shift, will the parking deck be left in the up or down position?
Can you repeat that one more time?
The deck, the
Would it
lift
be-
deck, will be left in the up position or down position at the end of the shift
At the end of the shift, it would be left completely down.
on the floor?
Yep.
Go ahead.
Is it okay if I leave the microphone off? Am I clear enough?
You're fine.
But it's getting really echoey. Okay, I have some very specific operational questions. All right, so I'm gonna go one at a time. This is very different than a retail establishment or a housing. Okay, this is a intensive use in a very specific time period where you need to make this operate. Okay, you're the operator. Okay, so my questions to you are very specific to your operation. How do you manage it when you're going to have the worshipers come in their periods? Okay, you're going to probably be pretty consistent about the number of people that come. Right? What happens when you have someone fall out sick or you're not able to have enough manning for that? How do you manage that? How is that going to get managed?
Sure. So we have a network of about 200 valets in the area that we can fill in, and we do it quite often for a lot of our valet sites. So we already have a workforce built in, and many of them are happy to pick up extra shifts and side work, at a number of our valet locations. We, Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. So we have quite a few operations in, in Manhattan, not places of worship, but we do operate these stackers in residential environments where obviously it's different parameters, but also in controlled environments, well-trained employees who know what they're doing, very robust SOPs, so they know exactly how to operate efficiently. And we have quite a few employees who are ready to come in at a moment's notice. So I did mention that we could operate at 11 pretty efficiently, just one up top for screening. But with a robust team and at stable state, most of our teams already know what their jobs are, and the captain can move sort of out of the operation and sort of oversee it, so he can actually step up top to cover for screening. So we could operate shorthanded, and also in the way that we're planning this operation, so we're moving parking in sections and sort of rotating throughout the garage. Technically, one lift operator with a key can move between sections and operate those lifts as well. So we would backfill with runners to park the car, and then the operator, the lift operator, would fill in multiple sections. Because if you think about it in that way, only about 3 lifts would be moving at one point, right? Because they will be in different stages of operation. So 3 would be at rest or waiting for the next vehicle. Correct. We have Klaus multi-parking. We actually installed them in a site up in Inwood. Most of our employees are already trained on stacker systems. For the most part, they all operate quite similarly. It's a key with a drop lock, with a 2-inch drop lock. Left is down, right is up, and then an emergency stop. So we do have standard operating procedures, and then it's a very quick, these systems don't vary much in terms of operation. So in terms of quality and build, yes. So we do have preferred vendors. In terms of operating, it's by design in the industry so that it's sort of interchangeable between operations. Correct. I'm confident we can. Sure.
Of cars under the lift, the other guy's above, now the car won't start. What are we gonna do?
Right. So in an operation,
Worst possible location.
in an operation like that, we would, because of our system with the check-in, digital check-in process, we have a phone number and a name for every vehicle. Our valet or supervisor captain will search the license plate in our system. It takes less than 3 seconds to do, and they can contact the owner of the vehicle up top and let them know, like, we will get to your vehicle last because we have an issue. And with the typical valet operation, they have what we call, I think we call them low jacks. They're very low rollers that kind of clamp up against the wheels and you can push them out. So we would have to do that at the end of the operation, but that's how we would address it.
That sounds excellent. That is an absolutely great answer to that question. I think that we should all be very comfortable that that's gonna work. Now, for the other side though, what happens when it's stuck on the top?
A vehicle stuck at the top, as in the
Well, you have two problems here. One, we have, let's say the lift doesn't work and the hydraulic gets jammed and you can't get it down. And then what happens when the car is stuck on the actual platform?
So the bottom vehicle would always be able to be pulled out. So it would just be the top vehicle that's stuck up top. We would have to call Klaus Multi-Parking and have them troubleshoot the system. We have not seen that in any of our operations though, but I do understand the concern.
Okay.
Mr. Jar, I think I could probably answer that too. If for some reason that vehicle is stuck up top and can't be accessed, it's going to stay up there. I mean, that's just the way it is, okay?
It's going to be a very unhappy patron of the facility. I guess, again, because we're a little tight on parking here, I guess the challenge becomes, what if that happens on the first visit, and now we have, the challenge, okay? And then, I guess the last thing is what would make me feel a lot more comfortable if maybe you could share with us the SOPs that go with each one of these things, because my assumption would be that there needs to be, at least to give me some level of comfort, I'm not a voting member of the board, I'm only giving advice to the board, okay? But, for the folks here, I think at the very least, they should be entitled, or at least be given the opportunity to see what the SOP is for these situations. They are going to happen. I do think that the lift system, I would love to agree with the fella, but I have far too much experience with other lift systems. I've never worked with the Klaus, but I've worked with many others. And sadly to say, every single one I've worked with is broken, and is broken at the worst possible time. So, I think we should see those SOPs. I think that is especially, we don't have a ton of surplus parking here. This is very tight. So I think knowing that this can actually work is through seeing those things and knowing that that's what's on the site and how it's going to operate.
Yeah, and I think if we can provide that, we will. All right, we'll get that information. I think the good thing about this particular system being located in an interior garage is, and I agree with you, I've been to some stacking systems in New York, which are outside. They get corroded. They're subject to weather issues. They get wet. That's not going to be the, that's obviously not the situation with this. As well, we would certainly have routine service of these lift systems done through Klaus. And, obviously we have a vested interest in making sure that everything works properly here. I think the other thing too is that unlike other systems, these are really not going to be used that frequently. It's not like they're going to be continuously going up and down. It's a very controlled environment, but certainly we can provide that standard operating procedure if you'd like, Mr. Jar.
I think that'd be very helpful, and I think also the more data on the reliability of the system would be helpful. Albeit I do agree that this system might be actually being placed in ideal conditions, right? Inside, underneath, protected. So it probably will operate better, longer, faster than any of the other ones I've ever worked with. albeit, I actually have one in Hoboken that I work with that is inside, and it's actually the one that breaks the most. So, but it's also very, very old. I think I think what we're missing here are those details. I think that would be very, very helpful, and definitely, please give us some level of comfort, because on my end, and then the next question will come, and we'll have some questions for the traffic engineer. On my end is going to be, well, what happens when we do have a systemic failure? Okay, now that is probably not a question that this fellow is going to be asked to answer. I think that we'll ask your traffic engineer on how to answer that question.
Mr. Chair. Go ahead. I was thinking just to clarify, there is no parking surplus here. I just want to be clear from the board perspective, and from because it's during board professional and board question time. I just want to clarify that from the board's perspective, there is no parking surplus. So it's not as though there's a limited surplus. There is no surplus.
Anybody else?
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead.
One quick follow-up. Mr. Liu, just so I'm clear, did you do any site-specific analysis or research to come up with that 1 hour estimate that you gave us, or is that just your general experience across all of your parking operations?
It's based off of our experience through operations. We consulted with quite a few internal teams who've seen quite a few operations that look very similar to this. So yes, through quite a bit of experience, we've looked at this site.
You've never been on Ernston Road, right?
I have not. No.
Okay. I didn't mean that pejoratively. I just wanted to know if you went out and took a look at the road and conditions were on a Friday, and looked at it yourself when you're giving your estimate here. That's all I asked for.
Understood, and I'm testifying to the most efficient operation versus traffic patterns. So I think that's a
because we see it when we're waiting for the bus and our kids or go to the UES. We see the traffic conditions every day. So I just wanted to see if we're talking apples to apples. But thank you.
absolutely understood.
Anybody else have any questions? If not, at this time, I'll take a motion to open up the public.
Motion?
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
When you come up, give me your name, your address. Jimmy?
And members of the public, please do remember, this is not, we still will have time to provide testimony and comment to the application in general and with regard to these specific issues. At this time, and I know it's hard to do sometimes, you get into it and you want to, provide your opinion, but at this time it is of questions of these two witnesses that, based on their testimony this evening. So, try your best to control any additional comments or testimony you want to give about anything, even whether it's regarding this or any other issue with this application. That will be at another time. Once again, this is just questions of these two witnesses.
Mr. Sachs, you want to bring the manufacturer's rep up? Just in case we need him. Jimmy, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Jim Robinson from Parlin. You're going to think I'm making a statement, but I assure you I'm going to put this in the form of a question. You might recall that at the first meeting I asked you to please caution Mr. Sachs about testifying. You did that then. Tonight, he told the valet expert that he can't testify. In response to a question from Mr. Muller about traffic, he told the valet expert he can't testify because he's not a traffic expert, not his area of expertise. He was right. But Mr. Sachs tonight has testified about traffic, about parking, about hours of operation of the mosque, about whether people can exercise first and then worship later on Fridays, and even about the corrosion of equipment that's outside versus inside. So he might be right about those things. They are not his area of expertise, and I would ask you to please, once he says it, whether it should be on the record or not, doesn't matter, you've heard it, and these people have heard it. So I would ask you to please caution him. He can tell you what his client said before. For instance, when he was talking about the hours of operation, gentleman came over and sat next to him and said something to him. I'm sure if he was giving the right answers, gentleman probably wouldn't have come over to correct him or say something to him. So I would ask you to please caution him to not testify. That's the first thing. The second thing,
Sir,
which I'm going to put in the form of a question,
well,
is...
sir, hold on, before you get to your question, because we haven't gotten there yet, and I'm sure you'll have one. Mr. Sachs, I'm sure, is a zealous representative of his client, and him and his client have the right for him to do that. However, this is an experienced board that's aware that they are to consider facts and evidence put before them, and those facts and evidence come in the form of answers given by individuals under oath and by documents that are presented to them as exhibits. And so the members of this board are well aware of what they should consider, can consider.
I understand that, sir.
And as a board that is a public entity and is a representative of the local government, is not going to counsel a legal representative that he can't make statements. He is a representative.
You're going to allow
of his
Mr.
client.
Sachs to
He is a
testify, I
zealot-
guess?
Well, no. Mr. Sachs is a legal representative, and he can make statements on his client's behalf.
That's right.
Board
He is the
an
legal representative,
this
not the
board is an
parking representative, not the traffic representative.
Sir, this board is an
Okay,
educated.
fine.
This board is well aware. The members of this board are very well experienced, and they're very well aware what they can and can't consider. They know what evidence constitutes, and they don't need to have somebody tell them what, every time a statement's made, what they can and can't consider.
Well,
mean, they're
I would
very
beg to
learned
differ
people.
with you on that, because if they didn't need it, they wouldn't let Mr. Sachs continue to testify on areas that are not within his expertise. The last thing I will say before I sit down is, while I appreciated very much the comments of these two gentlemen, I don't think they were qualified as experts. Was that an oversight?
They did
Was
not
that-
have to be qualified as experts. People can be fact witnesses. There's a
Okay,
difference
thank you.
between a fact witness and an expert.
I
An
appreciate that
expert is
very
somebody
much.
who offers an opinion. Fact witnesses offer testimony on facts. And these gentlemen tonight presented fact testimony.
So if they offered opinions, the board should discount that? That's my question. Took a while to get there, but that's my question. Do you have an answer to that question? If they offered opinion, should the board discount that?
Depends on what the opinion was. I mean, I think this board is a learned board
they're
that
fact
hears
witnesses.
lots of applications, sir, and frankly, that you discount this board's ability to weigh the facts and evidence put before it is somewhat insulting to them.
Well, you're making an assumption about what I'm discounting. Might be a correct assumption, but you shouldn't make that assumption. Thank you very much.
Sir? What was that? Trying to answer.
Good evening, Michael Can, 12 Vincent Street, Portland. I have a multitude of questions of all of the...
Just pick the mic up, please, thank you.
Okay, any better? Michael Can, 12 Vincent Street, Portland. I have questions of all of the experts. Go down the list, try to have them separated, but there might be a little bit of carryover. I believe it's Mr. Khan. I have a question for you. You stay. Do people walk into services late?
Walk-ins, I'm not sure about the walk-ins because...
If you're actively in a class, if you're actively having a prayer service, people open the door and walk into the room where the prayer service is going on.
At the time of the prayer service, yes. The idea there is like a congregational prayers. So in the evening, if there's a time for the congregational prayer, they will come in and offer the prayers.
But if you're actively participating in your prayers, people walk in halfway through the service, or do they wait for the next one?
You're talking about Friday or any other service?
Any day. I'll generalize it.
Yeah, there are different rules for congregational
Timing,
prayers versus the
seasonality.
rest of the prayers, though, yeah. So there are different rules depending upon what time they're joining, what part of the prayer service they're joining, but there are ways they can join in. Yes, if they're coming late, they can join in.
So they can walk in at any time, and that's welcome.
Not any time, within that, when the prayer service is happening, yeah.
Understood. I'll ask you a particular question, and this is,
Sure.
just came up at the end with the data collection of the parking system. Are you going to allow a private company to have your attendees' personal records of prayer service attendance? Is what he's proposing as a management tool for timing in and out and awareness and notification if there's a problem with one of the vehicles in the stackers and they can't move it. So they're going to maintain data on all of your customers.
I think that is more for the applicant, I'm their engineer, but usually, like in our case, basically, we are just talking about basic license plate and name. And again, their
Phone number,
and phone number, and again,
and history.
it depends, I mean, they will definitely have some kind of an announcement telling the parishioners, basically, and actually, Larry can answer more, but they can tell the parishioners up front, like, okay, what information is required. If somebody feels uncomfortable to provide that information, they can wait and park on the surface parking. They don't have to use the basement parking.
Mr. Chairman, the only comment I was going to make is that the court reporter is going to have difficulty when we have two people talking at the same time. So maybe, I think it's just in general, people like to talk at the same time, but if you're going to ask a question, let him finish and vice versa.
Thank you.
Oh,
That's my question.
welcome.
Mr. Sachs, what's the recourse when this parking system proposal does not work? Are you willing to shut down the facility on the days when there's understaffing?
Well, I think one of the concerns of Mr. Jar is he wants to see what standard operating procedures are, and we'll provide that.
We're going there, brother.
All right. Yeah, I couldn't commit to shutting it down. I mean, hopefully, we're putting in a state-of-the-art system. Yes, of course, things could fail. We get that. And certainly, if it turns out that there's a complete failure, then obviously, I would probably tell you there's not going to be a prayer that day.
How
So,
will you measure failure?
I don't know if I can answer that question, okay?
Thank you. Mr. Fitch, what exact models were quoted to the end user? There are 14 separate models that all have various heights, so your timing is not accurate on some of them because each of the individual models has a different height for the first and second layers and the range of operation. Which exact models are you proposing out of the 14 that are on the sales literature that it is in imperial metrics?
Yeah, it's listed here in the exhibit. It's
Exactly. Which one?
CP61.
Nope. And then there are subsequent models on your sales literature, 14 subsequent
Yeah,
ones.
this is
As a matter of
CP61.
It's the 190.
It's not on the quote, so it's not entered into evidence.
It's your CP 61-190.
Yes.
What's the range of motion of a vehicle that has to leave one of your lifts? How much free space is required once you leave the lift?
Not sure I understand the question.
Got a parking stall at a 90-degree angle to your drive-through lane. What is the requirement of free space of the lane to load or unload a vehicle?
Can you answer that?
That's not for me to answer. That's your design of the parking environment.
All right. I don't want to irritate Mr. Robinson again, but I will tell you that I guess my traffic engineer could probably answer that question at the next.
I can attest it's on the literature of the product data. It's on there. It's noted, it's part of it with a particular number. So you don't know.
There may be recommendations in literature, but that's just a
No problem.
recommendation.
Do you provide long-term support for the ANSI standards?
Do we provide long-term support to ANSI standards?
Correct.
I'm not sure what that means.
Who does the annual inspections on these units?
That is a Klaus service team.
Is it provided in a quote or is it provided on an ongoing basis?
It's provided in the quote, and then they are owners are offered whatever term they'd like. Could be forever, could be 10-year periods, whatever they choose.
What is the standard of required service and inspection?
Twice annually.
And that's included for the first year of ownership, so there's in service and then there's 6 months? Or is there in-service 6 months and then 12 months after delivery?
It's 12 months from commissioning, so when it is live and active, it's 12.
But it has to be inspected upon installation?
It will be, yeah.
And then when?
And then 6 months, and then again at the
And then
year,
who's
completion of
responsible-
1 year.
Who's responsible after that?
The owner, if they have contracted, yeah.
Indefinite lifespan with service, proper inspections and certifications, understood is what your testimony was?
That's correct.
Correct?
Mhm.
What happens if it's not annually serviced and inspected?
Yeah, anything could happen. There's no eyes on it, so there's no way to predict.
Who's
Points of
responsible
failure.
for the annual inspections?
That's part of the service, yeah. That would be part of the
Owner?
service agreement, yeah, the owner.
So then I have a question for Metropolis Technologies. I have 14 different questions. Who owns the lifts?
That would be the client, the owners.
Who's responsible for the annual inspections?
That would also be the clients.
Do you follow ANSI standards in your operations?
We can make recommendations, but it's all,
To what level of operational standards do you follow at your other facilities?
we have our own internal standards and procedures, but in terms of like the lifts, that would all fall to the owners. And we would make recommendations if we deemed anything unfit. We could, obviously, we have our employees and customers' best interests at heart. So if something was deemed unsafe, then we would cease operations.
Are you under contract
Currently,
for this operation?
we are not.
What expectation do you have for an operation time that your services are required?
We don't currently have any expectations.
So you'll expect to have 12 people come in on a day for how long of a period?
I guess I don't understand your question, but until we have a contract signed, we do not commit to.
I'm trying to determine a service level.
Sure.
What metrics do you use at your other facilities for a time? A customer walks in, and I'll use your term, visitor experience flow. What's your metric for success?
Sure.
At one of your other sites?
It depends on the site. It's very site dependent.
You're a large company, you've got metrics for operations.
It's very different. There are very many variables. We have sites that have elevator lifts and 7 floors of operation. We have others that are very simple, single floor operations. So it really depends. This one has time constraints in different zones that we operate. So unfortunately, it is a site-by-site specific assessment.
The key operation, similar to many other vertical lift systems, stackers.
Yes, sir.
It's got a key. They're individually keyed.
Correct.
What happens when one key disappears?
So in this typical operation, what we would require is that each zone has its own generic key. So if it's 6 stackers, because we want the one operator of the lift to be able to move between the stackers and operate them within his zone, so to operate efficiently. So from our diagram, we would require 5 keys, 1 for each zone. And then we would also keep backups in a lockbox.
Where do the minivans go? It was minivans go.
Minivans, they would go under the stackers. We have it.
Will they fit on the top?
They will not, no.
And it was earlier testimony provided that the majority of people would show up in minivans. I believe the parking expert will have to verify that. Where do the people from those minivans go? On the map, on the flow chart that you had, that's not visible to anyone to look at. Where is the safe zone for those occupants?
We would
4 people, I believe, was the earlier
We would then keep
testimony.
them on the surface lot.
Where exactly is that on the surface lot?
Well, there were 43 spots on the surface lot. We would move them into the roundabout first and then out into the lanes, but not by the entry and exit lanes.
Where is that? On the front of the building, or is that in the bottom underneath the parking deck around the blind corner?
No, so if you came in through the entry, it would be a hard right, and then there was a roundabout there. That would be the first zone.
Roundabout under the building or roundabout in front of the building?
In front.
Okay.
In front.
So that's where they're dropped off?
If they were minivans, yeah, or oversized.
All occupants, we can generalize at that point. Where are they going to pick up the vehicles?
Towards the front of the building.
And there are how many people at these times coming and going?
Sure.
What
And-
is your expectation? You were obviously quoted 12 employees to manage the workflow.
Sure.
The workflow is based upon how many cars at a given time per hour.
We quoted based on the full occupancy of the garage. So it is, I believe it was 141 within an hour. So
Do you believe there's enough safe space for the occupants of 70 cars, 70 vehicles to sit in front of the building on the sidewalk?
I believe some will have to stay in their stall until the lane clears, and then we'd direct traffic to merge in as traffic flows out, yes. So
Between the exit from the parking deck below ground, around the 180-degree turn, where will the cars be queued for the people getting into their cars?
yeah, can I see? I need the, oh, there you go.
A1, of the most recent.
We anticipate them being queued right here on this staging lane.
What's that linear footage of frontage of the building there?
I can't particularly, it's a little blurry on mine.
I'd have to refer to the site plan on that one, so.
So your parking expert's not here, or traffic expert's not here.
Well, our traffic expert will provide an answer to that question.
Of how many cars will fit in front of the building
Yeah.
safely and have curb access?
Well, he's going to provide a revised parking study and traffic study based upon the testimony that has been provided tonight with these exhibits.
The obvious question becomes, where do the rest of the cars go that they're unavailable to use the curbside?
Sure. So the rest of them will stay in lane until the lane moves, and they will be merged into the traffic.
So
Or
the
they would stay
overflow-
installed.
The overflow, and I'm just using exiting clients,
Sure.
the backflow will be back underneath the parking deck?
Not for all, some of them will, yes. They will be flowing up the ramps.
So how do you propose a secondary loop within the parking lot that's coned off and has oversized parking vehicles in it?
Sure. So as you can see, there's two lanes. You only need one lane because traffic
Curbside
will.
pickup.
Right. So on curbside would be the stage vehicles. The next lane over will be where the vehicles get pulled up and moved if we need to.
Are there walkways there to get people safely to the vehicles?
I believe so, they are.
They're not walking through traffic of internal secondary loop of people going back to the parking deck?
Sure, I
Your
mean,
own employees going back to the parking deck?
our employees, some of them will. There will be designated runners, yes.
Will there be occupants of those vehicles will need to go through traffic to get to the front of the building?
They will not, no.
How do you propose getting over the line of vehicles that's parked curbside?
Well, that's why we would be bringing the vehicles out systematically, and we would establish with the place of worship that this is how the operation will run. So the last coming in will be the first to get their vehicles.
And I have printed today from the website of the Majid our timing, so just literally printed today. I know there's always a question of timing of services. Friday, this is printed today right off their website, a 1 o'clock service, a 1:20 service, a 1:45 service, and a 2 o'clock service. How do you plan to deal with?
Again, I'm not sure this witness is qualified to answer that, all right? Because again, we're going with 2 services, and we've committed that we will have either an hour or an hour and 15-minute gap between those 2 services.
Prayer services are predicated upon
Well, prayer services are predicated upon sunrise and sunset.
Correct.
All right? But we have leeway in terms of determining when those services will begin and end.
Is there any way to enforce non-compliance with that?
I'm not going to get into noncompliance. I mean, certainly, if this board acts favorably on this application, they're going to put certain conditions into any resolution. Those conditions, I'm assuming, will indicate that we will have 2 services and that there will be a certain period gap between one service starting and the second service starting. And that will be obviously contingent upon the emptying of this parking garage.
Yeah, are you okay with a valid contract and operations contract with a parking provider in perpetuity as a condition of building occupancy?
Well, I think probably, because I think, again, I think this board, if it acts favorably, is going to condition that we have a valet parking agreement in effect during the operation of this masjid. And I guess that could be in perpetuity, sure.
And what hours shall that valet service be? in
That would be,
effect?
that would be contained in a contract.
Based upon amount of services,
No, no.
dictating amount of,
2 services on a Friday, all right? And again, we are going to provide those times. Now, it could change depending on the time of year. However, we will agree to that certain gap between the 2 services occurring.
I show 9 services on a given Friday.
Yeah, well, correct. There is an early morning service, there's a mid-morning service. Again, and perhaps, yes, I'll have Mr. Khan testify to this.
If you look at the heading of the table, there are a couple of different things. They're not all the timings of the prayer services. It's timing, but this one time is also for the call for service. When there is it's a religious ritual that you call the service, which one person can do it in the whole mosque. And that is basically sets the time when it's time for that service. It doesn't mean it's a congregational prayer at that time. The congregation, that is basically just announcing that the time for this prayer has started. So that is one of the times. So there are no 9 services.
So who will be the arbitrator of when parking assistance and professional services are required?
Again, I think we indicated that it would be during peak demand times, which are the Friday midday services. You've heard testimony from operations previously, and even from Mr. Khan at previous hearings, that the early morning service is not well attended. The peak demand for services are on Fridays, and that's with any mosque within the state of New Jersey, within the United States, and across the globe. So, I mean, I think we have some consistency with respect to that. We also will commit that we will use a valet parking the valet parking company when there is a special event that's occurring where we anticipate that there'll be a larger attendance. Those are the conditions.
You will have a magnificent facility.
I'm sorry.
You will have a magnificent facility if this gets approved. Do you not expect attendance to increase?
Do I not expect what?
Not expect it to increase. You're going to have a wonderful facility, magnificent.
Well, again, I think
outstanding, unmatched anywhere in New Jersey.
I'm not sure about that. I mean, there are some pretty significant.
42,000 square foot is pretty magnificent.
Getting beyond the scope of what.
Okay. I have more questions for Mr. Sachs.
Please wrap up. We have other people that
Sure.
want.
So the Majid will own the lifts. Who will pay to inspect the lifts? Is the contractor responsible for maintaining the lifts, or will you provide an outside service to maintain the lifts?
No, I believe the owner of the property, the masjid, is going to enter into a contract, and that could be a condition of any approval to have these lifts serviced. And if first of all, I have a feeling that the board would probably condition upon that data being reported back to the construction department within the borough of Sayreville. We have certainly have a vested interest in making sure that these lifts operate. If the lifts don't operate, it's a problem. So certainly they're going to be serviced on a routine and regular time schedule.
One more question.
Okay?
Nope, I'm done. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sir? Ma'am, you're next.
Don Perry, Prusakowski Boulevard, Parlin. I have a lot of questions for traffic. Is there a place on the website where I can submit them for the traffic engineer rather than take up time here?
Mr. Sachs?
Well, again, my traffic engineer is going to be preparing a revised traffic study.
Okay.
That study will be posted online.
And will we be able to ask questions
100%.
based on that?
Yes, you
Thank
will.
The other question I had is, where are these replacement employees located? Can they come to the facility quickly if you have like an overflow of people pulling out? And how does that affect your operation?
Sure. We have employees all through, as you know, Central Jersey, Princeton. I know that's not close by, but we have operations everywhere, so that we can
But
mobilize
they can
very
be
quickly.
timely in how they get there.
Yes.
You say Princeton, it's a little bit of a ride. It's not like it's around.
Yeah, it was just an example, but we have operations everywhere. We have small operations, large operations, all across Jersey, and so we can mobilize very quickly.
This was discussed previously, and I just didn't understand the answer to it. But how many cars would get to sit on these pre-parking lanes before it goes out to Ernst Road?
How many cars can sit?
Are going to sit waiting to be checked in before it goes out to Ernst Road and starts to back up traffic on Ernst Road?
I would think that's a question for the traffic engineer.
Okay.
And I don't think that we should put him on the spot, but I like the question, and we'll make sure you get an answer.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Ma'am? How to handle that? Ma'am, you're next.
Hi, my name is Lisa Michelle. I live Main Street. I just want to talk a little bit about just the nature of this request for underground parking to begin with. It seems a little disingenuous for the nature and character and the history of that area, which has been predominantly residential with mom and pop commercial establishments. I understand this is a religious site, but they're basically asking to build a commercial complex the size of a regular supermarket. The ShopRite in town is 90,000 square feet. That's a super size.
Ma'am, this is what I was referencing before. I know you want to provide testimony of how you feel about the application, you want to give your information to the board, but this is not the time for that. This is time just for questioning to these witnesses based on the testimony that's given this evening. The time to provide the information you want to provide right now will be at the end of the application in total, which may be at the next meeting or following. I'm not sure how that's going to play out.
Okay.
But you absolutely will have time to do so.
The fact that they need to double or triple the size of the parking for this establishment in such a condensed space, the structure and building of that underground parking structure, can you speak to the safety of that and the condensed nature of that?
I think you heard that from the manufacturer as well as the operator about the safety of the lift system. And again, there are building codes for everything, fire codes. So again, in order for us to get the permits, we have to comply with those code requirements. So this will be fully code compliant facility following all the applicable codes for the project.
Okay. What about the safety of electric vehicles in such a condensed underground parking space for a heavily trafficked area, as well as a residential area? In the school system, recently in the news, a Tesla blew up in the street, and it killed people living in an apartment complex next door. So what about doubling, tripling the size of the parking underground, creating more of a fire hazard in that area with increased use of electric vehicles?
We are not proposing any electric vehicle in the basement or in the area where the lifts are. All the electric vehicles that we are required by law, New Jersey state law, are going to be on a surface parking.
Okay, so you're planning to use the surface space which is not big enough for the parking to begin with, for a lot of the overflow that can't be accommodated underneath.
That's why, if you remember, that's why we break down the service. Originally, when we came first here, we were proposing one service. And we heard the public, we heard the board, and that's why the applicant is willing to have two services rather than one. So that essentially is doubling the capacity of the parking for the amount of, or the number of parishioners that are anticipated to attend.
And I think you alluded to, in describing parking, commercial parking in general, you were comparing this to baseball stadiums and things like that. This is not appropriate for a baseball stadium. It's not commercial space, so you can't use the same metrics and comparisons for the traditionally commercial spaces that you're operating in. Baseball fields and baseball stadiums, they have a lot of lead time, a lot of lead roads. If you've been to that mall up in Secaucus, you have to drive through so many access roads just to get to a parking garage. You guys have very limited space there. You don't have all the space that you think you do to operate in optimal circumstances. I know you're not going to talk about traffic, but I have lived here my entire life. You are never going to have a Friday afternoon or a Monday afternoon or a Sunday morning that is going to give you optimal traffic conditions on Ernston Road. If you have people making left turns out of there, that's going to back up. If you have people making left turns into the structure, that's going to create more traffic. So I understand that these questions may not be appropriate for now, but I really just have to say it is so disingenuous for you to be considering underground parking. It is not in the character or spirit or the history of that area, and it is not fair to the residents at all. This should not be at this point right now. This is a disingenuous application. They acquired 6 homes in a mom and pop commercial space in a residential area, and now they want to put up a grocery store facility with underground parking.
You're no longer asking a question, but providing testimony.
Let's keep it to the,
I know, I've spoken a couple
Okay.
times before.
Thank you very
I've
much.
been here since meeting 1. Nikki Voccio, 12 Dunlap Drive. My first question is how can we necessarily trust the testimony that we've been getting here today, or questions that we've been getting here today, answers to the questions, when we were initially told that additional parking wasn't even warranted?
I mean, I don't really believe that's a question they can answer. You know, an applicant comes before a board and they present an application, and the board and the municipality push them to try to make their application better. And that's certainly what's happened here, and I imagine it's going to continue to happen. Now, as far as why you can trust the testimony, well, the individuals who provided testimony in the course of this application have been put under oath. Most of them are licensed professionals. The others are individuals who are in business within the state of New Jersey and have professional reputations. And they're testifying as to facts. Now, ultimately, should this board decide that this is an application that under certain circumstances should be approved, there will be conditions that are put on it, conditions that the applicant will have to meet and that will be enforced by the municipality through its code enforcement and other entities. And so, you know, this is a quasi-judicial proceeding, and the people who are testifying here are testifying under oath as if they were in a court of law. And,
Right, but-
and so because we may not like, somebody may not like what they're saying, is not a reason to say that we can distrust them. And as I said, many of the people who are testifying here are licensed professionals of the state of New Jersey who names on documents and testify before many boards and before many entities and many courts. Now, ultimately, this board will review the evidence, both testimony and documents that are presented before it.
and this board will make a decision based on that as to whether or not this application should be granted. But, you know, it's not appropriate to call into question the veracity of professionals who are testifying before the board because they're on an application that you may not agree with.
That's not what I did at all. What I did was ask, how can we trust the statements and answers that are being given if when initially we were told that ample parking was being provided? And now that's not the answer anymore. But let me move on. Kids. Were kids taken into account that my lovely friend Amanda brought up? 60 seconds in and out for children? I have 3 kids. By the time you get them in, get them strapped, somebody has to find their binky, somebody needs their sippy cup, 60 seconds is not happening. Did anyone take into consideration more than one family member, a family of 5?
Faster, sorry. It would be an average. So
Do you have children?
I do have children.
What's the normal time to get your kids in and out of the car? It's not 60 seconds.
To be fair, my child is 4 months old. I lift him out and take up his bag. So, you know.
Okay, so 3 kids, maybe 3, 5, and 7.
I understand. I do not. I do not have children of that age. No. So I
So
couldn't
would you
answer
say
for
that 60 seconds isn't accurate for a
That
family
that
of
would
5?
that would be on the upper end of our average.
So
It
maybe
would take
5
longer.
minutes for a family of 5?
It's possible. That's why we have the staging lane and the driving lane, because it is all in on one stage and then all out on the other.
So would you say that the calculations that you gave were probably just for one person getting in and out? And that those numbers don't apply to anybody that's more than one person?
As an average, if I pulled up, and I don't mean to be facetious at all, but if I pulled in with 3 adults, if we stop the car, chances are all 3 of us are stepping out at the same time, right? So, yeah, I'm not trying to be, you know, snarky or facetious at all.
No,
Right?
no, I get it, but that's definitely not the case with my mom.
Sure.
Just so you know. My last question is, do you live in the city or do you live in a suburb?
I live in a suburb.
I'm going to direct you not to answer that question.
Whatever. My question is, if you lived in the suburb, would you want an underground
I'm going to
garage
direct you not to answer that question.
being built right next to your home? Why not? Why wouldn't that be a decent
Because
question to ask?
this Mr. Liu is here as a representative of the company that is going to, in the event that this application were to be approved, the applicant is represented to be the company that would manage the
I know what he's here for. It's a simple question.
the on-site valet services. Mr. Liu's personal experiences, where he lives, his family are of absolutely no relevance to this application. And I would have to tell this board that they would have to disregard any comments,
I
statements, or
got my question
testimony
out to
given
Sayreville
regarding
and
that.
the board, that's what I needed.
Don Scarano, 42 Frederick. Yeah, no problem. Quick question for you, because I wasn't sure. Now, we're only using a double stacking system, or, because I thought there might have been a triple some places, just a double stacking. What's the height requirements on that? What's the height requirements on a double stacking?
Yeah, I don't have it yet.
Yeah. The height of the basement floor to the ceiling is 12 feet.
Oh.
That will accommodate 2 tiers of the lift
And that's
system.
not going to affect the height of how high the ending structure will be of the building, the top, right? So that means we have to
No,
go low.
no.
That means we have to go lower. So now my question is, if we're going lower, this building, how far off the property line to the families that live behind up the hill is this property going to be? Because now we got to dig below, right? We're going to be putting pylons, we're going to be drilling. How's that going to affect the ground to those houses and their foundations? Do we have any studies on that? So now we're going to start interrupting.
Sir, if I can just refresh your
It's part of
recollection, one of the members of the board in our second hearing had requested, and the applicant agreed, that they would undertake studies regarding ground movement resulting from this application. I believe that our member had requested that, and I
Did we
know
get
that the
that?
applicant has already agreed to that. So
We got that?
during the construction, the applicant has already agreed, in the event that this application is approved, that as a condition of approval, ground movement, vibration studies would all be undertaken to ensure that there is no impact on the surrounding neighbors. And that is something they've agreed to.
So it's.
If
in
it's approved.
In essence, it's more of theater, we don't know if anything actually can happen. I mean, we do know, is it a fact saying we can drill this far, nothing's gonna happen, or there's a possibility something can, is it saying there is a possibility that something can happen, or this is guaranteed that nothing's gonna happen to any of these houses?
Don't answer.
That's what I'm trying to get at. Is there a possibility? Like, does this report say 95%?
That's a question for him and him. But the applicant has agreed to do the study to ensure that that will not happen. But as far as,
Mr. Chairman, that report has not been provided yet. That was discussed that as a condition, if this application was approved, they would provide that report for review to ensure that there's no adverse impacts on the surrounding property.
So that's a key, that should be a major key before this even breaks ground,
No,
right?
no,
We should know, because my thing is this, God forbid everything, they come back and say, oh yeah, this is 95% foolproof, right? God forbid they start building and so-and-so house says, oh shit, my foundation shifted, I've got cracks. Now what happens? Like, say this has been approved, but something does happen to one of the houses or a couple of the houses, now what's the next step?
that's why, sir, they've agreed to do the study, because your point is well taken. That the applicant has to do the study before the project can move forward.
Mr. Chairman, can I explain a little bit?
One second. Other parts in town, when they built Town Lake, we had this problem with the compaction, and they tried to do the heavy plates, and then up on Outlook Avenue, they were cracking foundations. Kaplan had to pay for all of it.
Okay. So it's still a process where they have to pay for damage, but it's not a project where something.
I think based on, and I won't speak for the applicant, but I think what the applicant's represented is that they're going to take a study to make sure that's not going to happen, because I can't imagine that if the data came back that there would be that impact on the residents, that it would go forward.
If I may add to the question. We are meeting the setback, the rear setback. And the basement is 12 feet, maybe the foundation, I would probably assume like that would be a spread foundation. We don't have to do piling or any deep going to do the bedrock or something. It is an average type of construction. It is not something like we are putting a skyscraper that you will need heavy compaction and piles and things like that. It's a typical construction that you see anywhere. Even warehouses that are built in the town, they probably use the same kind of a system that what we're going to do. It's going to be evaluated. As far as the study, yes, the applicant agreed that they will provide this vibration studies and things like that. If there are any damages, there will be remedies to it and applicant will be liable for that.
Hi, Carol Esposito, Parlin. You said there's, Esposito, I live in Parlin. There's 43 surface parking spots, some of which are going to be used for the valet or holding area. You said that the full-size SUVs will be on surface parking because they don't fit. What model vehicles are considered full-size SUV?
Full-size trucks and full-size SUVs. So Chevy Suburbans, for example.
Can you give us a list of all the full-size SUVs that will not fit?
I'm not sure we could provide that right now, but if your question was, some of these vehicles can, and Mr. Liu, I'll have you answer it, I think you stated before, some of these vehicles can be parked on the lower level of the stacks.
Right, you said mid-size, so like if I have a Volvo XC90, will that fit?
Yes.
That'll fit underneath?
Yes.
Okay, so like you're talking Suburbans, Expeditions.
Yeah,
et cetera.
and again, you have to mind, just to remind you, like these parking spaces is required, they should be 9 by 18. That is the standard size parking spaces that you find everywhere, even in the malls, parking and things like that. So we are providing 9 by 18 parking spaces.
Right,
So
but
we
it
are
has to
complying
do
the
with the height of the
requirement.
vehicle.
Yeah, I think it's more to the weight rather than the size. I think that's my understanding. I might be wrong, but you guys can correct me.
I can add some. So as mentioned in the exhibit, it's a 6,000-pound capacity lift. So that becomes your most limiting factor is
So it
the
has
weight.
nothing to do with height of the vehicle.
They have a
but-
set height of 12 feet that they can work within. So whatever combination of vehicles they want, that could fit within 12 feet, they could operate within that context of 12 feet.
Okay, and then 0 electric vehicles will be downstairs in the basement, is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
And then up top, how many parking spots must be designated as handicapped?
We need at minimum 5 spaces.
Thank you.
Drew Weingarth, Weingarth, East Brunswick, New Jersey. I was raised in the Old Bridge section of Parlin. As always, thank you all for your time and service. Mr. Fitch and Mr. Liu gave very nice PowerPoint presentations. PowerPoint has the ability of inserting video. Did either of you consider inserting a video on the operation of the stacking system?
Well, there's no video provided tonight. I think we provided an explanation and photographs of how the system appears. I don't think video is really necessary.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. It was also presented or brought up about the mechanical issues of the stacking system. There are other variables of mechanical issues that could potentially go wrong. Never mind the stacking system itself, but the vehicles that would be parked in the stacking system. What happens in the event that a vehicle cannot start or gets, the vehicle itself, I'm not talking about the stacking system, but a vehicle has mechanical problems within the stacking system. How is that handled?
Sure. So if the vehicle is on the bottom, for example, we would contact the vehicle owner of the top and let them know that their vehicle will be brought back at the end, after all vehicles have been brought out. We have what we call, I believe they're called low jack wheelies, where they clamp onto each wheel and they're able to push the vehicle out and then bring the vehicle down and out. If the vehicle is on top, then they would just be the last one out and obviously pulled out at the end.
Thank you. I think as to what many of us have pointed out, we're concerned that based in the area where all these stacking systems are, if there is a problem with the stacking system itself or a car being a problem, we're all concerned about the domino effect of things backing up. So it was also, I believe, brought up about I'm going to call it an escape or a bypass lane. I believe someone testified that there were 2 lanes within this area, correct? Okay. And handicap parking was mentioned, so that was answered. And thank you all very much for your time. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I may just ask a follow-up question with regard to the video, only because if you look on page 6 of Exhibit A7, the Klaus PowerPoint presentation, it does identify that it is a video. So I just want to clarify that there is actually no video, and that's just an error, or is there a video that we just haven't got a chance to see?
Yeah, that video is available on the website.
Okay, but it's not part of the PowerPoint presentation?
Correct.
Okay. Just one, there's a point of clarification, because I did note that, and I was curious if we were going to see a video at one point. You're up, sir.
Good evening. My name is Joe Karmazin, 322 Ernston Road. I'd just like to know, what is the actual total number of spots on site now? Since we revised it from the last time, parking garage up top, what's the total spot number count now?
57. I don't know the exact number, but I think it's around 160.
Around
Yeah.
160? Okay. I also wanted to ask, So we have limited spots for larger vehicles, right? So say 80 SUVs, minivans pull up to one event. What do we do in that event?
So obviously, ideally, we don't want them on the stackers, but as Mr. Fitch testified, they can go on if we needed them to.
Okay, as long as they are under the weight requirement, right?
Correct. There's not many vehicles over 6,000 pounds.
I want to know, is there any kind of comparison to having one of these in a suburban area as opposed to like a city or a larger, you know, like she said, a baseball field or whatever? Because like I've never seen any of these in a suburb before. Is there any kind of comparison to this?
I've seen them in residential condominiums.
Like
the
apartment
underground garages.
complexes?
Underground garages, yeah. So
Yeah.
I have seen them. Yeah.
Okay. The other thing I wanted to ask about was pulling into the property while we had the first prayer service on Friday, right? And then the new people are coming in, and you said there's a staging area off to the side where you can potentially store some cars while they're still moving cars out, right? How many cars can you fit off to the side? Like, is there a number where, like, you know you can keep 20 cars there, 40 cars there? Traffic expert, that's for the next meeting? Okay.
And I would expect you would be able to provide a drawing that would show that, so that,
A flow chart, perhaps, too, would be helpful?
well, I would expect there to be a drawing.
On the site plan.
Yeah, that would reflect the staging area, the queuing area, and that would reflect the number of cars, so that the public can see that, correct? Okay.
And to add to that question, what about a fire lane? So all these cars are coming and going, there's a fire. Fire truck has to get in. What do we do?
The fire truck is not going to get into the basement because that's not part of the.
Well, I mean, anywhere on site, fire, anywhere on
Yeah,
site.
we have ample circulation around the building if they need to get close to the building. We have enough room circulation aisle. We ran the fire templates to make sure like they work. So they have the access to the building or even to the basement.
Okay.
So, but again, according to the NFA code, they have to stay away from the collapse zone. So they cannot enter or take their equipment in any areas where there's a chance of any collapse. So it's a safety procedure, so they cannot, they won't go inside the basement.
No, okay, so I just want to make sure though, that, so we have all these cars staging, people are coming in, a fire truck needs to get in, will it be able to enter the site?
Yes, of course.
Oh,
yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
all right. Speaking of the fire chief, I remember a meeting or two ago, he didn't sign off or look at the plans. Do you know if he ever looked at any of this yet? I remember the board said something about it.
Would defer to the applicant, have you submitted the final site plan to the fire official and had them review it for circulation of the fire vehicles within the municipality?
Yeah, I believe that's occurred. I'm not sure if I have any correspondence from them, but if I don't, then I'll follow up with them for sure.
It will be done.
Thank you.
All right, we're getting late. Who wants to speak? Anybody else? Go ahead, one more. Let's keep it short. Thank you.
Michael Can, 12 Inch Street. Just was running based on the model of hoist, lift, running cars size-wise. So for the previous example of her XC90, Toyota RAV4 will not fit on top of it. If I'm looking at the specifications, what do you use as an average vehicle entering your facility as a dimension? And how can you?
Sir, just so I understand your question, what is the average vehicle we use?
For your approval of the site to accept responsibility for the amount of cars yet to be determined coming into the facility, for you to put a price onto a contract to provide the service and have enough people to do the job successfully.
Our contracts aren't based on vehicles, it's based on capacity of the site. If in any part of our operation we deem it unsafe or that we can no longer accommodate in vehicles, we would turn them away. So,
Sir, I think your question might be better posed to the representative of the manufacturer. And asking that representative of the manufacturer, given the number of spaces that their client has told them that they would have, and looking at what we anticipate or what data tells us are the vehicles that are most commonly used in this area, how are they able to represent that the number of spaces indicated is viable and is real, given the types of vehicles, since not everybody, with no offense, drives Toyota Corollas. And that might be the individual who's better able to answer that question, sir.
So I have a follow-up question. Will these two experts be here next time with the parking and traffic experts on site?
Mr. Sachs?
Yeah, if we need them here, that's fine, Mr. Chairman. And just so to reiterate, I think the testimony previously was that there's 12 feet of height, so there aren't too many vehicles that people drive in their personal capacity that are more than 12 feet high. And secondly, and I guess this is, we could all, back when I started practicing,
Well,
we did
it's 12 feet of total height.
12 feet of total
For
height.
two spaces,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I'm seeing a lot more Defenders and Suburbans out there,
Correct.
these days.
No, I understand that, but I will also tell you that I wanted to check out what the weight of a Suburban was. Couldn't do that when I started practicing 41 years ago, but now I can. And the range of a Suburban is from 5,600 pounds to 6,000 pounds. So at least we know what we're talking about.
And just for clarity on that 12-foot height and what it accommodates, most of those larger SUVs that were just mentioned are around 6'3" at their top. So those would be inserted at the bottom, and the space above would be for a crossover or a sedan. That would be the typical combination. There are combinations of medium size that do fit within that 12-foot range, but that would be for the valet team to determine what goes where.
How do you determine, how will their training, back to an operations perspective, how will their training determine the height? Do you have a measurement device on hand to facilitate accurate measurements before you try and put something up in the air and hit the ceiling or a sprinkler head or some obstruction?
Or we need to, if we can answer that.
So,
sure. So the first vehicles that go up, because it's not a straight up or down, they can release the key to stop the vehicle. And our employees are trained what is a safe height to get it as close as possible. And then from there on out, when they begin to fill the bottom rows, they would be able to see which vehicles will fit in
and
which
it goes
bottom
to a
stalls.
training perspective of fill-in employees will have that knowledge base.
Correct. Yes.
How do I get a copy of what was presented for the parking operations flow chart provided this evening that was on the PowerPoint presentation?
Tomorrow I'll have it scanned in on our website.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for everything. Appreciate it.
All right, last one.
Carol Esposito again. I just want to follow up since we're talking about the height of some of the vehicles. A quick Google search. Audi Q7, Q8 are just under 7,000 pounds. BMW X5, X7, 7,000 pounds. A Honda Odyssey is over 6,000 pounds. So there are some regular family vehicles as well as like big Suburban, whatever. Jeep Grand Cherokee, 6,500 pounds. So there are Land Rovers. So there are many cars that are very common to the area that many people drive that are more than 6,000 pounds and would be unable to be on the lifts. So I just wanted to clarify that. And I think you said about the Suburban, so I can give you that one. 7,800 pounds for Suburban.
Anybody else? Shark, go ahead.
Hey, assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you for having me today. Oh, my name is Yusuf Sharabadi, Cerebral Boulevard South. So, Yusuf, Y-U-S-E-F, S-H-A-R-A-B-A-T-I. So my question would actually be for you, my friend right here. Because of your understanding with valet operations, correct, and your experience in it, as pointed out earlier, would you say that you have had multiple, if not, multiple instances where you have worked with more than 5 zoning operations? Yes? And how would you say that has ran? Like, how would you describe that experience? Like, from what you've seen, when there's more than 5 zones or 5 zones, operating at once, is it a smooth operation?
It typically is, yeah. So if you have one strong captain,
Yeah.
right, and this is a very relatively remote operations. We're not sending anybody to a different floor or to a different, part of the actual lot, right? It's very line of sight.
Yeah.
It's very easy to direct your teams in that
Okay.
sort of sense.
And you usually train your staff pretty well, I'm assuming, handling thousands of dollars on a daily basis.
We, when you see, we have teams who do train the staff, so it's very standardized, and we have an actual training program.
Okay.
I personally, I'm the director of operations, so like I see more, higher level, teams. So.
But yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
But we do invest a lot of finances into our training programs.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Anybody else? Mr. Sachs, what are you going to bring back for the next meeting?
Well, we, at least,
Everything we need to finish, right?
yes, we're going to have our traffic expert available, who will provide a revised traffic report. We will have our planner available, and we will finally...
These 2 gentlemen.
These 2 gentlemen, we'll make sure that they're here, okay, to answer any questions, but I don't really plan on calling them again, but certainly they'll be here. Our architect will be here, but the new testimony will be from the traffic engineer and from the planner.
So just to clarify, basically, you're going to have all of your witnesses, and I think especially if you're going to be potentially wrapping up your testimony, and there are going to be some new information provided by the traffic witness that, for the board's sake, I do recommend that be the case if you can have all your witnesses here, because that way we're not extending it just because someone can't answer a question of the board.
Yes, we'll comply with that.
Chairman, can I ask one question, please?
Go ahead.
Those stackers are going to be operated by utility power coming into the building?
Yes.
Okay. Is there going to be an elevator from the basement going up to the upper floors?
Yes.
Yes, we have our AD access.
And is there going to be a standby generator that's going to be in that building for if there's a power loss?
Actually, there is no generator, but I think as Mr. Fisher testified, the system, for the elevators, they're a hydraulic system. They don't need a backup power.
But what if you lose utility to the building?
Electric and something, at this point, I don't think so there is a plan for any emergency generator.
Well,
Typically-
I'll indicate this. If the board is inclined to recommend that there be some type of generator, we certainly could comply with that.
I think that's an excellent idea.
Okay.
Ma'am, you have to come up and you have to be...
Study and Lisa, Michelle, how far in advance of the meeting will the traffic study be available?
We would have to provide that at least 10 days in advance of that meeting.
Okay, thanks.
I'd like to thank the public for everything that they've done tonight. Oh, all right.
Gary Bello, Compton Place.
He answered it.
You're saying the next meeting will be the last meeting?
We're hoping.
Just for this specific
We're
topic?
hoping.
Just for this specific topic?
No. We're going to do everything.
Well, Mr. Chairman, if I might just jump in here. The applicant is indicating that they're going to be completing their testimony at the next hearing. They're expecting that they're going to be presenting the traffic engineer and the planner, and that's going to be the last of the witnesses they're going to be presenting. I asked if the applicant could please have all the witnesses there at that time, because if they're going to conclude their case in chief, then that's going to be, the board may have some questions that may address some of the other witnesses to be able to answer. So that way all of the board's questions can be answered. And then once their application has been closed, their presentation, that's when, as I mentioned numerous times at these hearings, that's when the public now has the opportunity not just to ask questions, but to make statements, provide evidence, provide testimony if you want to, provide witnesses if you have witnesses of your own, expert witnesses if you hired an engineer of your own, to come and present to this board. At that point, I'm not saying that the hearing will conclude at the next one. It may, it may not.
We may have to carry over the public portion.
Because I was just wondering, somewhere along the line, we were supposed to define the hours of operation. That hasn't been clarified yet, has it?
No, that has not, that's something they still have to
missing
provide.
information.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's the same thing with the Friday afternoons, that they stipulated that they would do the hour and 15 minutes between the two things. They're all things that are going to get hammered out. We're going to try to do it on the 16th. If we don't, we'll have to come back.
But I mean, as far as starting like 4:30 in the morning, that'll all be defined. Yes, we can.
Mr.
no, we
Sachs,
can't.
Mr. Sachs said that he will have that for us for the year, not just, okay?
I just wanted to make sure that's
All right.
still brought up. There's one other issue, a call to prayer. I don't know if anybody knows about that, but it's a amplified call.
No, nothing outside.
Nothing outside?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, they said that a couple of meetings ago.
Okay, I might have missed that.
Okay, that's all
Thank
right. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, I have one question. Follow up, please. When the patrons enter the site, do they drive their own cars into the parking garage, and do they pick out their own parking place?
They do drive all the way down into the subterranean level, right in front of the elevator banks, but they do not pick out their own parking stalls.
Don't do that. Okay, so where does the patrons get out of their car?
There's an elevator bank that they can.
At the top or at the bottom?
At the bottom. At the bottom, in the subterranean garage, they will step out, the valets will take over, and they will step into the elevator.
Okay, and then at the end of a service, do the patrons come down and do they maneuver around the parking garage?
No, it would be up.
They
It would
go
be
to
up
their own
top.
Cars?
Sorry about that. They would be up top.
When the patrons, at the end of the service, they come downstairs into the parking garage, do they get their own cars?
No, the vehicles, the last vehicles to get checked in will be the first vehicles pulled up top, and the patrons would wait for their vehicles up top in front of the building.
Okay, so as far as there's no people movement in the garage itself?
No, we would not allow that. That would be a liability.
Go ahead.
I'm not sure if this is going to be for you guys or not, but will one of the rooms in the garage level be turned into like a little office or reception area for the operations team?
I don't think there's any plan for that.
Okay, Mr. Sachs, just so, and for members of the public here, it's my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, that this meeting is now going to be carried to the October 16th meeting. It's going to be at this location at the same time at 7:30. No further notice is going to be provided, so everyone, members of the public here, you're being noticed now that the public hearing on this is being carried to the October 6th meeting at 7:30 at this, 16th, excuse me, October 16th meeting, thank you, at 7:30 at this location. And at that time, we will proceed, continue with the application as I just stated earlier.
All right, I'll take a motion to open to the public.
Make a motion?
Oh.
This is not on this application.
Not on this
Motion to
app.
public on general comments.
On general comments. Take a second. Seeing none, I'll take a motion to close.
Make a motion to close?
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Take a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for being hospitable. Oh, wow. And that's what 4 hours of sit does.